Hey everyone, I know normally we do an excerpt of the show at the beginning, but I just wanted to come and let you guys know and both talk about how impactful this episode is, specifically about bipolar disorder and how our guest Nikki comes on and talks about her experience. She gets really deep about it, and we want to prepare you for this because it's so important to talk about this when not a lot of people do and have that negative stigma on it. So we wanted to tell you how important and how deep this episode is.
Yeah, there might be some subject matter that you find uncomfortable, but sometimes we need to talk about things that are uncomfortable to get through them and to help people. So just understand that some of it is intense, and that we hope that you can take the time to listen to it and process it, and yeah.
That's what it is, man. That's all it's all about. Well, let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Everything's Okay, our mental health podcast brought to you by the one and only Crazy Ant Media, where this week we're going to be diving deep into bipolar disorder, a mental condition that affects millions of people worldwide. Unfortunately, due to misconceptions and stigmas attached to it, many individuals with bipolar disorder face challenges and don't necessarily receive the proper care and support they need. Now, our guest today is author Nicole Smith, who recently just published her first novel, Swim the Abyss, which I am currently reading and I am just absolutely enjoying. And it deals heavily with bipolar disorder. And I'm super excited about this conversation so that people can just learn more about it, because there is that negative connotation, that stigma behind it. And, it's something that I feel like multiple people that you cross paths with on a daily basis might deal with. So I'm super excited. Thank you so much for your time and coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. And I mean, with what I want to start off by talking about, the age. What age did you officially get diagnosed? Because this is one of those things where I feel like people try to attach something else to it at first, right? So what age were you, quote unquote, first diagnosed with actual bipolar disorder? And I guess what did they try to classify it as first?
I was officially diagnosed at 41,
Okay.
which is old. I started dealing heavily with depression at 33. And I really think that's where it started. My psychiatrist thinks that's where it really started.
Yeah.
Because they put me on antidepressant. And I would say, people think you're up and down. It's not necessarily that way. I deal more with anger issues. And I will say I self-medicated. I would work 16 hours and come home and have a couple of drinks and take the edge off and go to bed. And I think that's what most people that have the disorder do. Or they drink all day.
Right.
I mean, or do drugs. I mean, that's their coping mechanism. So I would say, it was probably a good 8 years before I got the real diagnosis. And that was probably because I had not worked for a couple of years. So I wasn't under the stress of working so many hours. And I had quit drinking for a number of years, 5 years. So it was just a number of factors. I'm not drinking, so I don't have that coping mechanism. I'm not working 16 hours a day, so I'm not having that to take up my time. And it's I'm with my son, and yes, that takes up time, but not like everything did before.
Right.
And then it's headed off by trauma. So typically, I don't know anyone that also has it that doesn't have some sort of trauma. that they went through in their life.
That's okay. So that's a really good point, because I feel like there's definitely something that does trigger it. And you know, I like what you said, because with the anger issues, right? Because one of the things that's associated with it, and I think that people confuse with it, because there could be multiple reasons for these, are the mood swings, the drastic mood swings from, like, you're fine, everything seems good, and then you're just not. You're angry as hell, and you're taking it out on people, and you're like, what the hell is going on? Like, you were literally just fine, and now you're screaming at everybody, kind of a thing. And there's so many different things that can cause those type mood swings, right? Like, my mother is currently having those type shifts, but hers is early onset dementia, and so she's experiencing it. And so I think the stigma with bipolar disorder is that, like Logan said earlier, everybody tries to associate something else with it. So it can't be this, it must be this, or your mood swing must be because you're drinking, or you're this or that, and so anything but saying it's probably this. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that people are so nervous about calling it what it is? Or, I mean, do you think that it's looked at as like a severe mental health problem, so people are not wanting to address that that's what it could be? Do you think that's why they stay away from trying to diagnose it that way?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, from what I've read and been told, schizophrenia is number one, and bipolar is number two on the scale. And so I think and hope as a society we become to understand depression more, although we all know there are different sides of depression.
Right.
I've not been able to get out of bed and literally sat in a dark room and stared at walls. And there's functional depression where people can go and do their job, but it doesn't mean they're not depressed.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And I hope that people are starting to get a better idea of that. Bipolar, I've had people ask me, like, do you have multiple personalities? Well, okay, number one, that disorder is not even called that anymore.
Exactly.
It's dissociative identity disorder. So you're not even up on the lingo. And so then I have to explain, well, no, and I start going through symptoms and, how I got diagnosed and the things that happened. And had an interesting conversation with a gentleman one day, because I don't hide that I have it. If
Right.
someone's, really talking to me and they want to get to know me, I say I have bipolar 1. I want to make the distinction. I never say I am bipolar, because you wouldn't say I am diabetes.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I am cancer. I have a disorder. It's just a part of who I am. And I manage it with medication. But this gentleman, I said that I have it. And that's when he's one of the people that asked me, was it DID? And I said no. And I started naming some of the symptoms. I said, you'll go through cycles where you don't feel the need to sleep. Like, you will not sleep. You want to spend all your money. Like, somehow you think there's a money tree in the backyard and you're just going to spend it all. For some people, and this is an embarrassing one, they get overly sexual. And I know people that have done porn, or they're out on the street picking everybody up off of Bumble.
Wow.
And that's really bad when they come off their manic episode and they realize what they've done. But then when I brought in the anger, I said, I'm not necessarily, when I have a manic episode, up here saying, la-di-da, let's all go to the movies and let's go to Disneyland.
Right.
I said, I get angry. Everything irritates me. People's voice grate on me. I want to run away and get away from people. And he sat there for a few minutes, because he had told me previously he was separated. And he said, I think I've been living with that for 20 years,
Oh, wow.
meaning his wife,
Right.
you know, and it was like this light bulb went off. And I think if people had more honest conversations, they would realize that either they have it, someone they know has it. Um, it really upsets me when someone says, I had a manic day. Really?
Right.
You know, you had a manic day? It
Yeah.
doesn't work that way.
Right. Well, this is why we started this podcast is for that very reason, to have these open conversations and to have, because I feel like there is a lot of people out there that are going through things that have no idea they are going through them. They think they might have this. They maybe think that they want to do this or that and are terrified to talk about it or bring it up because they don't feel there's a comfortable space or that it's somehow a hidden thing that you keep quiet in the back room kind of a thing. And so we're hoping that by having these type conversations and this dialogue, it will help people come out to be more open about these things. Because a question that I have that I've always wondered about it is when it happens, is it random? Do you just is it you have a day, it just kind of comes out of nowhere, or does it build up, or is it both? Do you have the times where you can feel it building up, and then other times where everything's fine, and then you just do have an outbreak? I mean, how does that work? How does it work?
I would say it can be both. I had a psychotic break. So with bipolar 1, and you have to be diagnosed with having a psychotic break to be bipolar 1. Bipolar 2, they're going to have all the symptoms except they haven't had a break.
Okay.
So with that, you have hallucinations, delusions. You really create your own world. Like other people can be talking, they're not a part of where you're living. And so when that happened, months were leading up to it. And I didn't understand because it's not like people around me were talking about bipolar. I didn't know people that had bipolar. My doctor thought I was just depressed, and little things were happening, like the money.
Right.
It's like we needed a new car. Okay, let's go buy a Porsche.
Right.
And we did. And I'm like the most frugal person on the planet. So I think that should have been like a bell ringer for someone,
Right.
That knows me. But it wasn't. Then that was probably my big one was, I was spending money and I'm not a money spender. And the sleeping, I like my sleep. And then suddenly I'm not. I'm awake at all hours or I don't even go to sleep. And you have like these grandiose ideas. Like, I think I could be the CEO of any company. And then the triggers for me was I had a lot of trauma. And at the time, my brother was living with me. He doesn't live with me now, and he didn't live with me on like a regular basis. He had moved in for a couple of years from back home in Georgia and moved here to California. And a lot of my trauma was based around him. And I started like hearing his voice and certain things he would say, and a little trigger would go off. And I didn't understand why. I didn't understand what was going on. And it's just every day a little something would go off. And then that's when one day I just was like, I need to go to a hotel. And everybody was like, why do you need to go to a hotel? And I said, I have to get away from everyone because I felt like I was going to explode. And of course, nobody deserved that.
Right.
I didn't need to, my kids are there. Nobody needs me to yell at them. That would be really wrong. And I did. I left for like a week and a half. They knew where I was. They were talking to me. It's not like I disappeared into the ether. But when I came back, it was clear something was wrong.
So did they approach you at that point then? Because I feel like you said, that like the Porsche should have been a trigger, right? Like somebody should have said, hey, wait a minute. So when you were going through like the depression and the different like type bouts, did they feel like they couldn't approach you, or were they just trying to avoid the situation that there may be something wrong, or just in denial of the fact that they know this isn't regular behavior for you, but they're not going to approach you because they're in some sort of denial? What do you think it was because I feel like with all mental health issues, depression, suicidal, whatever the case may be, I feel like people either miss the warning signs unintentionally, they're oblivious to it, or they're avoiding the warning signs. They see them, but they're terrified to approach because they somehow don't want to be wrong or feel like they're getting, into somebody's life when they don't want them in their life, kind of a thing. What do you think it was for you? Why do you think those signs were missed?
I think it was not understanding. My husband knew I dealt with depression. And was on medication. I'd even gone out on a leave once from work because, here in California, they'll put you out on disability for 6 weeks that's paid for because you put into it, through your paycheck. And my doctor took me out for 6 weeks one time. So he knew that I dealt with depression heavily. And I think from maybe February of that year, I seem like a happy person.
Right.
So I think he just thought, Nikki's feeling good and she's all right. And I think the Porsche part, like, he's a thing person. So he was happy. I think he just thought she's loosening up a little bit because, we're better off financially than we've been for years. So maybe she's splurging. Because that was June. So, February to June, I'm a happier person. So I let up the reins a little bit and say, yeah, let's get that Porsche. And then it was the end of August where suddenly I'm like, okay, I need to go. And I think that's when he definitely realized something's not right. Number one, I'd never left my son for one day.
Right.
10 years old, almost 11, never left him for a day. And I know that then clicked. Okay, we have a problem here. And my husband would come to the hotel and check on me like every day. And that's when I started having like hallucinations. And I would say things to him and he knew I was not talking properly. And he called social services and they said, she can take care of herself. She's not harming herself.
Right.
So there's nothing we can do. We know you're worried about her, but she hasn't done anything. She's got the money to take care of herself. So that didn't get him anywhere. So that's frustrating on the system. So I want to start. That's one thing I want to point out. The system is really, really bad.
Yeah.
So because those people talked to me, they knew I had an issue. I mean, I was telling them I worked for Homeland Security. Right?
Yeah.
I was saying all kinds of stuff. So they just sat there shaking their heads and left the room. And then told him, yeah, something's wrong, but we can't do anything about it.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's so interesting, too. And I mean, you brought up a couple of times in this conversation medication, and there is a stigma behind medication. So it was when they first offered that to you as like a possibility of some help, did you like try it out? And I also know there's a path with medication too, because you don't find the right thing the first time. You go through your trial and error with a whole bunch of different stuff. So what was your journey with that at first? Were you trying to reject it, or were you open to trying it? Because I know my mother, she goes through a lot of stuff as well. She goes through depression and anxiety, and she was kind of nervous about the medication at first. She didn't want to rely on something that wasn't, natural to her body. So what was your experience like with medication? Were you scared at first, or how did that go?
I was against it.
Yeah.
Because when they offered me the medication, it was more like trying to force it on me. Because I did get put into a psych hospital on an involuntary hold. And I thought, it's 72 hours, right? You get on the Baker Act, you're here 3 days.
Right.
And I'm like skipping around, and my 3 days is over, and where do I sign out?
Exactly.
They're like, you don't. When the doctor says you can go, you can go.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like, what the fuck? Like, that's not the way it's supposed to work.
Right.
3 days. And I will say my experience at the hospital that I was at was a part of UCLA out here.
Okay.
And they were really nice.
That's good.
So I know they're not all like that. I've heard horror stories.
Yeah.
But mine was not like that. And the other patients were really kind. And it was kind of like, we're all in this together, all right? And, one of them pulled me aside and said, listen, if you're not going to take medication, you're never going to get out of here. Because you have to accept your diagnosis.
Right.
And you have to take medication. You also have to participate. Like they have, groups for painting and going outside on walks. And if you won't do any of that stuff, you're not acclimating yourself back into society. So why would they let you out of here? So I got that. I mean, I was with it enough to understand, okay, I need to do this. So there was that moment where I was like, okay, well, there's something wrong. I don't really know what it is, but if they're telling me this is what it is, then I'll take the medicine. And I did, but as most people know, or hopefully they know, a medication needs to be in your system about 4 weeks.
Right.
Before you see anything.
Right.
They kept me 2. So I wasn't seeing any differences.
Right.
But, you let me go. So I'm just going to go back out there and stop taking the medicine because I think you're wrong.
Right.
Right. That's okay. So a couple of things there that you, when you say, I think you're wrong, right? So that's denial, right? So I'm assuming denial is for sure part of it. And then the other that I found very interesting when you were saying like with the hallucinations or the stories that you were telling people that I work for Homeland Security and different things like that. When you're experiencing that, do you know that it's bullshit? Or do you believe what you're saying? Like I'm interested in that because I feel like if it's to the point where you literally believe what you're saying, then you're out there. But if I feel like it could maybe even be worse if you know it's bullshit, but you're saying it anyway. So I mean, how was it? Like, do you know?
No, I believed it. Like. Once something came out of my mouth, like, okay, so like originally the first time I said it, my mind was going, Nikki, that's not real.
Right.
But like 5 minutes later, I thought it was real.
Wow.
And other things, that I had delusions about, people would need to read the book. And they can find it all out. They would happen and my brain would just go, that's where the psychotic break comes in. Because you're saying all these things and they become real to you. So that's why you're in your world. You have these delusions. You think they're real. I woke up one night and I thought like all my dead relatives were around me.
Oh.
You could not have told me they weren't there.
Wow.
Because I could have sworn they were there.
Wow.
And it's like, you're hallucinating. And what is common with a lot of people is that they're talking to God.
Okay.
So um, every day talking to God, having conversations. No doctor can explain that really.
Right.
And the few people that I've talked to that have some sort of, theory on it is that, God is like as high as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think you're this person that's so grandiose, then who are you going to talk to?
Right.
Right.
And who's going
That's
to talk to you and understand you?
Yeah.
Because you're this wonderful, great person. So I guess that could be a theory.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up in a treatment center and everyone was like, yeah, I talked to God.
Wow.
So,
yeah, that's just like
Like kind of this big whole community that we're kind of aligned with each other, that we're all going through the same thing. Yeah, that's very interesting. And like for me, for example, because I was on a 24-hour hold, and it was going back to the experience of being in a facility and being where people are looking after you like 24/7, which would cause my anxiety to go like skyrocket, because I feel like everybody's looking at me in general through everyday life anyway. So when people are actually looking at me 24/7, that's terrifying. But then when I wasn't able to, specifically when it's nighttime, and I wasn't able to turn off the lights to go to sleep. So, I mean, that was very difficult, just so that they would be able to keep an eye on me, and what I was doing. I felt like it's a rough experience just from what I went through. And I mean, like I said, I was only there for 24 hours. So to be there, how long did it take you to feel like, okay, we're here, we're doing this, let's just, I guess I could say, when did you quote unquote give in and like go with the flow of things? Because like I was just from immediate like being taken there, I was like, okay, this is happening. Hopefully we can just get this done as quick as possible. But I know some people are very, they're very rejecting of the process. I know, when my mother overdosed, and when she came to, she was very rejecting of everything, and she was trying to deny that all this stuff was happening, and she was saying that she wanted to divorce my stepfather. Thankful that they're still together to this day, and he's been with us through all of this. But it's such a interesting journey, because there's acceptance and there's rejection. So I mean, it seems like the sooner you get to that acceptance phase, the quicker we can try to, I guess, figure out a resolution. But I don't know. It's that process in your head to try to switch the narrative from rejection to acceptance. So how long did it take you when you were in the facility to, like I said, quote unquote, fall in line or get with the program? I feel like those are two wrong phrases, but I hope you know what I'm trying to say.
no, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, the 3 days passed and
Yeah.
I didn't get out. And that's when I fell in line with them.
Yeah.
But it was only to get out.
Right. Exactly.
Because 2 weeks later, I was in a prison cell. So again, read the book if you want to know about that.
Exactly.
So I should have stayed. They should have kept me.
Yeah.
I mean, these are doctors. They should have known that I was not on track.
Right.
I mean, that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And other patients are telling you, like, do this, do that, you'll get out.
Yeah.
My roommate, this was like her 12th time
Wow.
at that psych center.
Mm-hmm.
And she was pretty young.
Wow.
The nurses were like, yeah, she comes about once a year.
Goodness gracious.
And just, she's with us for a couple weeks just to kind of get settled again.
Right.
And I was thinking, you come here once a year?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
these people are your friends.
Exactly.
Like, everyone knows you.
Yeah, she has like a handbook or a guidebook on how to approach this place. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, and like I say, it was a nice facility.
Right.
Like, breakfast, lunch, dinner, they gave you like a menu.
Wow.
I just
and it wasn't shabby.
no. You bring
And
up
this
a
wasn't
good
a private facility. This is a public hospital.
Yeah, you bring up a good point though about like you did what you had to do to because you wanted to leave, right? And I feel like there are problems with the system because I feel like you can play the system. Like when I was put in, I was angry. I was like pissed. And so it was during my divorce, and I was not at that time able to see my kid. My kid was being kept from me, and I was fucking pissed. I was enraged, and I knew I was angry, and probably needed to go. Right? Like, just get out of there because you're really angry. You're going to do something stupid. And so I said, hey, bye. I'm out of here. Right? The next thing I know, I'm getting pulled over by the cops, and they say, oh, you're apparently suicidal. You're going in. And I said, I'm not. I'm going out of town. I'm trying to go out of town to, and kind of a thing. They said, well, you don't have a choice. You're either going to the mental thing or you're going to a jail cell. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I go to the mental thing, and I'm clearly enraged. Of course I'm upset. Like, I'm pissed off at everything that's going on, but immediately can play the system. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to tell you every answer you want to hear because I know what you want to hear, and then I'm going to leave. And that's exactly, after several hours, what I was able to do. Oh, everything's fine. You're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. Because you find yourself in that spot where you'll do anything. And so you'll say whatever they want you to say and manipulate the system, knowing that they probably should have kept me a little bit longer because I was angry. And they should have found out why I was angry and what was going on. And so I think that there are issues with the system, right? I feel like they want to help, but sometimes you slip through. And you're back out there. And like you said, you were back out there and then in a prison cell, right? And so I feel like there's got to be some adjustments in the system to where, like, okay, he's angry, but why is he angry? Okay, she's doing this, but why is she doing this, right? They need to go deeper sometimes, I think, than they do. And it's a terrifying situation. I was like you, like you're in there, the lights are bright. They're like, you can't, you have this total sense of no control whatsoever. And that was the first time I had ever been in a situation where I didn't feel like I was in control. And to try to flip the narrative to get back in control was the only thing I was thinking about. Like, I have to say I'm in control. And that potentially is a dangerous thing to try to do. But so I think another problem with, at least with the bipolar disorder, is it's so terribly misrepresented. And I think, whenever you see it in movies or TV shows or like just being in any type of a media form, it's so heavily misrepresented that people buy into that, right? Because you don't want to, but you do. You buy into, well, that must be it. That must be what it is. That must be how it is. And I think that plays heavily into people not wanting to get help, right? I don't have bipolar because that's that, and I'm not like that. Well, that's wrong. Like, you don't believe what you're seeing there, right? That's a movie, but so you can't diagnose like I don't have it because I don't act like that. And I think that we need to do a better job, and that's why I want to talk about your book a little bit, because the book, while somewhat fictionalized, is also somewhat biographical, and it goes into, this is how it is. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to bullshit it. I'm not going to say it's this when it's really this. I mean, for anybody who's read the book, and I highly recommend that you do, you are not shy about saying some really deep, dark stuff. And I think to have that out there in a way, because we talk about this all the time, we feel like the best way to have these conversations is through art. It be that written or filmed or whatever, but it needs to be done accurately in a way where people can really see what's going on. So I think your book is extremely important to help this and start these type conversations, because it's a real look at what this disorder really is and how it affects people. Talk about why you wanted to do it. Was it therapeutic? Was it a way to get it all off the chest and out there? Was it partly because you do want to get it out there for the world and for people to understand this is what this disorder really is? Or talk about your motivations for writing the book.
Thanks for asking.
Of course.
A little bit of everything. So when I got home, I was still slightly manic because the meds wasn't getting, the correct meds yet. Totally accepted that I had bipolar. That wasn't a problem anymore. And all of this just started to pour out of me because I remembered everything. It was so vivid in my mind still. I was like, I have to get all of this down on paper. And I'm not naturally a writer, although I've always written. So I want to point that out. People that have bipolar are usually creatives. Go out there, Vincent van Gogh,
Oh, yeah.
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 look at a lot of actors have it. They may or may not talk about it, but a big advocate is Richard Dreyfuss. So that's just the way it is. You learn to cope. But that was the beginning, was like, okay, I'm going to write this book. And it is graphic.
Yeah.
It needs to be because, as you said, I get so pissed off when I watch a movie or a TV show and they make it look like something it's not.
Right.
It is ugly and it can be disturbing and fuck up your whole life. And if I didn't have the support system that I have, wonderful kids, a good husband, my mom, some friends that, Jesus, if they weren't there, it was like, I don't know how I would have gotten through all of it.
Right.
But in TV shows, they don't show you everything that's going on. It's just like, oh, maybe they came home and they tore their house up one day. No, I actually didn't ever do anything like that. And like I said, they certainly don't talk about the real symptoms of it. Like, who tells you that you go out and spend money?
Exactly.
You might just think, I don't know, that your extra money is coming in and you're going to spend some of it.
Right. Right.
You don't know. Or the anger. You might think you really are angry about something. But it's not typically that. Even the sexuality part, most people blame it on something else.
Yeah, they must be unhappy in the marriage, or there must be something like that. And then I can only imagine with that part of it, right? You said embarrassing part of it, right, or whatever. But so, and I keyed in on that because I have to imagine that at some point, if somebody is exhibiting those type symptoms and they are exhibiting that type behavior, at some point they start to doubt their own self-worth. Am I a whore? Am I this? Why am I tramping this way? Or why am I doing this? This must be who I am. I don't deserve better than this, right? So the other mental aspects that it starts to play on, the devaluing yourself and not believing that you're worth anything. And like all the other things that these behaviors and these symptoms lead to other aspects of other mental health. And so it's so dangerous. And so I'm glad that you brought that up because, well, and I have to imagine if you're exhibiting those type symptoms, other people are throwing that at you. Oh, you're just a whore. Oh, you must be this, you must be that. And how do you cope with that? Because we're all a part of that, right? You hear it so often, you believe it. You start to believe it, right? So when these things are being hurled at you, it must be true because everybody says. So that to even be able to cope with that or try to deal with what you're already dealing with on top of now getting all this stuff thrown at you from people who don't understand what you're going through, it's got to be terrifying.
Yeah, and fortunately I didn't have that. I'm going to put that out there. And I'm very fortunate about that. I was just anger and enraged And like you were bringing up, you went in because you were angry about your daughter and your divorce.
Right.
I had a restraining order out on me and I couldn't see my son. So I think that made the episode longer
For sure.
because I was so angry. Like, I just wanted to see my kid.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Someone can sit in a room with us. Like, just let me see my kid.
Right.
I went 3 months without laying eyes on him. It was horrendous. I mean, it tore my heart out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people, like, they don't understand that one person is going to have these symptoms, one person is going to have these symptoms. And so for me, it was just rage. And I'm not a yeller, but I couldn't even talk most of the time because I had yelled so much. But the people that I know, and I really have a lot of sympathy for them because we're in support groups, are people that are diagnosed young.
Right.
So if you're diagnosed at 16 or 17 and over-sexuality is one of your symptoms, and all you've ever done is sleep with a bunch of people, then yeah, people have this horrible image of you and they say horrible things to you, and then that's what you think about yourself.
Right.
And you start self-medicating. And then where does your life go?
That's, yeah.
You think you're nothing. You think you're worth nothing. Why should you do anything?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll be in groups because I do suggest that anybody that has it find some support group, even if it's online, because you'll see you're not the only one. The things you're feeling, the things that are happening, we're all together in this.
That's right.
And I think that people have to really see that to understand the numbers. And I'll talk to these people, and I can't relate to that part, but I want them to understand none of it's their fault.
That's right.
Like, their parents didn't see it. Their parents didn't understand it. And now they have bad relationships with them because their parents maybe still don't even want to admit that they have the disorder. A lot of them kicked out of their homes. It's really bad. So when you ask me when I was diagnosed, 41, like I say, is old. I mean, most people are diagnosed in their teens, maybe early 20s. So that's a big difference between me and someone else.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, I mean, go ahead.
As I say, like about 5 million people are officially diagnosed somewhere in there, but the number's much larger about who people that have it because they don't know what to look for.
Well, I feel like, things are very, like, there's that fine line between this and that and that and this. And, like, so it's, there's so many other people who, like you said, are probably misdiagnosed with something else when that actually have this. So, I mean, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story because it's so important. It's so important to have people know that they're not alone in this journey. And like you said, being able to go to groups, get in a chat room where people experience different things or just experience the same type of symptoms. Like, I feel like that is so vital and so key because we're all just trying to get by. We're all just trying to make it. That life does not come with a handbook. That's for damn sure. So it's all about, supporting each other and not tearing each other up. So that's very important. But I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story. And we do want to direct everyone to your book because, like I said, I'm about 6 chapters in right now, and I'm loving every second of it and can relate to. And I've heard stories from my mother and can relate through that way. So I'm definitely gonna book hop when I'm finished. I'm like, okay, you read this one now. But seriously, thank you so much, and you're always so amazing to us. So we can't thank you enough just for being in our lives and being comfortable with us to tell your story. So we just love you. You're amazing.
And yeah, ditto on all of that. And thank you for being courageous enough to share it, not only through the book, but then also coming on here and pouring yourself out like that. Because, you know, maybe somebody's terrified to go to a group, but they'll see this podcast and feel okay, right? Like, oh, there is somebody like me. Maybe this is where I need to go, or maybe this is how I can reach out and get help and do these things. So it takes a lot of courage, I think, with these type things to come out and say, this is me and it's okay. This is who I am, and it's a part of me, and it's something that I have to deal with. And to be able to have the courage to come out and say it and then help other people buy it. Yeah, we can't thank you enough for that. So just thank you, and continue to, you know, we're always here for you, and so, you know, yeah, it's just amazing.
It is.
You have the book sitting there?
I know. I was just thinking, it's on my nightstand. Yes.
There it is.
I love it.
I did.
You're so prepared. I love
prepared.
Amazon.com.
There you go.
Right
I love
now.
it. You're the bomb.com. I just wanted to let you know. But
You guys are really, really wonderful people, and I'm glad you're in my life.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm about to cry. Oh my goodness. Well, listen, take care. Thank you so much, and we'll be talking to you soon, dear.
Yes, you will.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh man, I mean, I gotta say, that's probably the deepest I've felt when I'm not talking about my own story.
Yeah, you just the empathy that you have for somebody that's gone through that, right? Like we both kind of scratched on, okay, we've been in that situation where we were put somewhere we didn't want to be, and we felt uncomfortable. But the idea of now that we can look at it, right? We were still in control. Mm-hmm. We were still, to come on and be courageous enough to share that I was totally out of control. I was believing everything I was saying, and I was just, I don't even know how that would be. So it's just incredible. And hopefully I think that, like you were saying and like Nikki was saying, there's so many people out there that probably have this disorder and don't even realize it. And hopefully if just one person can watch this and go, holy shit, maybe that's what I have, maybe I should go get some help, then totally worth it.
Exactly. Most definitely. That's what it's all about, man. Just helping other people out, building other people up, and not breaking each other down. That's what it's all about.
That's right.
Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast, the YouTube channel, all the good places. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Everything's OKP. We just thank you guys so much. And remember, everything's okay.